After being sent thousands of years into the past, a young scientist must gather the artifacts that will take her back home while trying to survive in a world full of prehistoric creatures. Today we're going to recap the first season of the series, Ark, the animated series, from 2024. While diving in the ocean, Helena Walker realizes that she is being chased by a predator and swims to try to reach the beach before she is devoured. However, just as she was about to enter the shark's mouth, another sea creature emerges from the depths and attacks it. Thanks to this, Helena manages to reach the sand safely and meets a native bird who soon becomes her friend. At that moment, a hunter approaches and tries to eliminate the animal, but the young woman protects him, as the species hasn't been found alive for over 300 years. Realizing that the girl is new to the place, Bob asks how she ended up there, and Helena realizes that she simply woke up in the water and ended up on the beach. Bob then claims that the same thing happened to him and reveals that they were both sent back to the past. The man then asks Helena to follow him and do exactly as he says, otherwise she won't survive a day in that place. During her conversation with the stranger, the young woman realizes that they both come from different eras, because 2 weeks ago Bob was fighting in the Second World War. When he discovers that Helena lived in the 21st century before being sent to that island, Bob asks who won the war and is relieved to learn that the United States and its allies won the battle. After a few minutes' walk, the pair arrive at a waterfall and Helena is amazed to see different species of dinosaurs alive right in front of her. Before being sent there, the young woman studied paleontology at the University of Sydney in Australia and became a doctor in her field. After a short rest, the trio continue their journey and come across an injured Parasaurolophus on the way. With Bob's help, Helena manages to remove the arrow from the animal's abdomen and then the creature gets up. When the dinosaur leaves, the ex-soldier asks how Helena knows those animals so well, and she reveals that she used to teach paleontology at the same university where she graduated. During the conversation, Bob ends up being hit by an arrow and dies immediately. Just then, Helena comes across a woman riding a dinosaur and has to flee to avoid the same fate as her friend. While running through the forest, she ends up in a village that is under attack and needs to hide from the dinosaurs. When she sees a boy about to be devoured, the paleontologist uses a shield to reflect light into the predator's eyes, as she knows that this species doesn't see very well during the day. However, a short time later, Helena ends up being captured and is about to be eliminated when Edmund Rockwell orders his soldiers to take her prisoner because he realizes that she knows those animals well. When he arrives at his tent, Edmund tells her that he was a member of the Royal Academy of Sciences in 1890 and says that he nicknamed the island Ark. The English scientist then takes the woman to see the camp and says that, as superior beings, humans should rule over all the creatures that live there. When she hears this, Helena is horrified and tries to convince him to free the trapped animals, but Edmund believes that he is just following the law of natural selection. When she realizes that the man wants to recruit her into his gang, Helena attacks him and tries to escape, but is chased by the soldiers. On the way, the young woman finds the bird she met when she arrived on the island and tries to take it back to the forest. However, the paleontologist ends up being surrounded by a T-Rex, which is under the command of Nerva, the chief of that bloodthirsty tribe. After being captured, Helena is sent to a cell with other prisoners and the boy she saved approaches her. After introducing himself, Jamie reveals that he belongs to the year 1746 and, on seeing them talking, Edmund decides to use the boy to teach the paleontologist a lesson. At that moment, Helena sees the young man being eaten alive and feels guilty for Jamie's perishment. That night, in her sleep, the scientist dreams of the day she received the news that her wife had been eliminated during an expedition. Suddenly, she wakes up startled and sees the Parasaurolophus she saved the day before. Happy to know that the animal is alive, the paleontologist decides to call it scary and asks it to run away before it is captured. In the early hours of the morning, Edmund shows up and takes Helena to visit the general. When he sees her, Nerva asks what she used to do, and the woman reveals that she has dedicated a large part of her life to studying the creatures that live on the island. In an attempt to win the general's trust, Helena claims that she can help him conquer all the dinosaurs and control them without having to use physical force. When he discovers that Helena came from a time much more advanced than his own, Nerva asks for her help in discovering how to use the most powerful artifacts that exist in those lands. For the time being, Nerva only has one of these objects, as the other two are in the possession of his enemies. However, according to the legends, when he manages to gather the 3 artifacts, he will acquire the power of the gods. His plan is to return to Rome and become the head of a great army capable of subduing even the mighty Caesar. During his speech, Nerva realizes that he is being watched by Helena, who is anxiously waiting for him to take the first sip of his wine. At this point, the general realizes that the woman has poisoned his drink and tries to attack her, but his body soon becomes paralyzed and he passes out. The truth is that Helena placed a poisonous snail on the edge of the chalice, and the toxins it expels are capable of paralyzing a human for a few minutes. After stealing the artifact and some of the general's notebooks, Helena scatters several pieces of meat around the camp and manages to attract the attention of the predators. She was about to open the cage when Edmund found her and interrupted her plans. However, when they smell blood, the raptors attack the guards and manage to free themselves. During the attack, Helena takes the opportunity to flee and is almost devoured, but Scary appears and attacks the predator to protect her. While the soldiers try to contain the attack, Parasaurolith helps his human friend release the prisoners and they all manage to escape. When he regains movement, Nerva takes up his sword to try to stop the rebellion and easily eliminates all the raptors who are trying to devour him. Seeing the general, Helena runs in the opposite direction to try and distract him in order to buy time for Annika and the other prisoners to escape. Determined to help her, Scary gives the woman a lift and runs her out of the camp. However, Helena does not manage to escape unscathed, as she is hit by a spear thrown by the general. Minutes later, when she is well away from Nerva's tent, the paleontologist falls to the ground and collapses next to her prehistoric friends. When she wakes up, she manages to remove the spear from her shoulder, but ends up being found by the guards and orders Scary to flee while she and the bird try to hide. Having lost a lot of blood, Helena is weakened and faints again. Moments before losing consciousness, she sees the soldiers approaching and is about to be eliminated when someone mysteriously appears to save her. When she wakes up, the paleontologist realizes that her wound has been treated and sees Scary lying next to a fire. After feeding her friends, the woman tries to fish, but her fish ends up being stolen and the trio have to flee the predators again. During their escape, they fall off a cliff and Helena ends up in a trap. There, she meets a saber-toothed tiger and the animal tries to devour her, but the woman ends up being saved by Mayan, who eliminates the creature with her dagger. At this point, Helena realizes that it was the same woman who saved her from the soldiers and follows her into a cave. After helping Mayan prepare dinner, the paleontologist asks a few questions and discovers that all the people who live on that island have a mark on their wrist. Before returning to the surface, the pair decide to rest for a while and, at dawn, Helena is invited to visit a secret hiding place. Along the way, Mayan reveals that there are other warrior tribes scattered around the island and they have all joined forces to defeat Nerva and his army. According to her, the artifact that Helena stole is one of the 3 pieces that need to be united to release the power of the gods, and Kor, the leader of the Knights of Heaven, has the second item. As the leader of the Southern Warriors, Mayan holds the 3rd artifact and invites Helena to join her army to help in the fight against Nerva. When they get there, the 2 women come across a huge greenish gate and Helena uses the artifact she stole from the general to open it. After entering the place, the pair come across a huge number of giant spiders that devour the blue bubbles that are formed on the surface of the rocks. It's not long before they realize they've fallen into a trap, as a giant spider emerges from the ceiling to devour them. While trying to eliminate the monster, Mayan ends up being captured by its webs and, just as she was about to be devoured, Helena starts screaming to get the tarantula's attention. After getting rid of the smaller predators, the young woman frees her ally, but the queen spider is still alive, so Mayan is in charge of distracting it while Helena throws the blue goo at the creature's body. At that moment, the smaller spiders start attacking her and the tarantula ends up being defeated. When the guardian of that hideout is eliminated, the women are hit by a beam of green light and the marks on their wrists disappear. They are then presented with a rifle and Helena soon figures out how to use it. With a single shot, the paleontologist opens a hole in the cave wall and manages to return to the surface together with her ally. Just then, Helena finds her friends again, but the group ends up trapped because the green obelisk flying over the cave has been activated. That tribe is led by John, a former ally of Mayan's, but the 2 ended up becoming enemies after the last battle they fought together. Out of consideration for his old friend, John orders her to leave, but the discussion is interrupted by the arrival of Alacy. The young girl met Mayan when she was still a child and ended up becoming attached to her, so she managed to convince her father to take her to the village. When she gets there, Helena is surprised to see how peacefully the people live with the dinosaurs. She soon realizes that John and his tribe have managed to do something that Nerva will never be able to, because they have formed an alliance with the dinosaurs through trust. Seeing Mayan after so long, Henry, the inventor, threatens to attack her with his crossbow, but John soon appears to appease the conflict and, while she talks to her former allies, Helena goes into a tent to rest. At that moment, she comes across 2 sick people and Alacy reveals that they are suffering from swamp fever. The disease is not contagious, but the main ingredient for making the remedy is the blue flowers that grow on the mountain slopes. The problem is that the great bird that rules the mountain devoured all the flowers and then started laying blue eggs. Upon hearing this, Helena decides to go after one of those eggs, as she believes that the plant's healing properties have been transferred to them. So John decides to lead an expedition to the mountains and, during the climb, Helena ends up slipping. She accidentally attracts the attention of prehistoric birds who band together to attack the invaders, but Alessi and her father manage to eliminate them with their arrows. With Mayen's help, Helena manages to climb back up and, before continuing the climb, the group decides to make a rest stop. During the break, the paleontologist takes the opportunity to practice her archery skills and realizes that Alessi is not in the best of health. The young woman reveals that she's been suffering from swamp fever for a few days, but didn't want to tell anyone so as not to be a cause for concern. However, now that her father has discovered the truth, Alessi is forbidden to continue climbing and, at dawn, John asks Helena to keep an eye on her while he and Mayen continue the mission. When she arrives at the nest, the woman slyly manages to get the egg, but ends up being attacked by a giant insect and must eliminate it in order to survive. At this point, she attracts the attention of the mother bird and has to flee, as the animal calls for reinforcements to destroy the invaders. Hearing her father's cries, Alessi decides to disobey his orders and climbs the mountain to help him. Thanks to the girl, the pair manage to survive, but John ends up falling off the cliff and the young woman runs to get the egg. Just then, the second pterodactyl attacks her, but Helena manages to put her lessons into practice and hits the creature with an arrow. Suddenly, John appears riding the giant bird and gradually manages to tame it. After hitching a ride on the animal's back, the rest of the team returns safely to the forest and Alessi collapses. After removing the chick from the egg, Helena puts some of the liquid in the youngster's mouth and she recovers. On returning to the village, they manage to cure all the patients who were suffering from swamp fever and Alessi convinces her father to let her keep the pterodactyl baby. Just when everything seemed fine, Annika appears with a wound in her abdomen and soon afterwards the man who attacked her appears riding a beast. Seeing the enemy approaching, John and Mayen eliminate it, but the woman can't survive the wound. Mayen then approaches the body, as she recognizes those handcuffs, and says that it came from Nerva's mining camps. Everything indicates that there is one of these camps nearby, so the woman decides to help Helena find it in order to free all the prisoners. In gratitude for all that these women have done for their people, John and Alessi decide to join them on this mission, but soon realize that they will need reinforcements to storm the fortress. So they walk through the forest until they come across a herd of stegosaurus and the girl decides to approach them to try and make friends with them. However, her plan doesn't work out as expected and she has to run until she reaches the big tree in the middle of the valley. Just then, Alessi meets a baby and tries to get close to it, while the young girl uses a piece of fruit to attract the animal and demonstrate that she is not a threat. Helena and Mayen form a barrier to protect her from the rest of the herd. Luckily, when they see the baby getting along with the human, the other stegosaurs stop the attack, as they realize that these women are harmless. After completing the first stage of their plan, Alessi and Helena dress up to enter the fortress and are greeted by Octavia, known as the Gladiator. The woman quickly identifies the disguise and orders her guards to prepare Alessi to take part in the next fight while Helena is interrogated. While trying to convince Octavia to free the prisoners, the paleontologist sees her friend being put in the arena with two carnivorous dinosaurs. Desperate to save the girl, Helena offers to fight the predators in her place, but the gladiator decides to make her watch Alessi being devoured. However, the young woman uses her knowledge of dinosaurs to make them fight each other and manages to survive. So, while she doesn't decide what to do with the invaders, Octavia decides to chain them up in the dungeon, but Helena uses the goo produced by the fireworms to free herself. She then asks Alessi to free the other prisoners with those insects while she crosses the camp to reach the drawbridge. However, just as Helena was about to complete her mission, Octavia found her and struck her down. The gladiator is about to eliminate her with her sword when Alessi appears with a large army of dinosaur-mounted prisoners. Seeing the rebellion, Octavia gets distracted and Helena manages to knock her out. Soon after, she pushes the lever to lower the bridge and Mayen enters the scene with the stegosaurs. During the battle between guards and prisoners, the gladiator decides to intervene and sends a Yutyrannus to the battlefield. The animal's roar alone is enough to intimidate the other dinosaurs, but Mayen decides to confront it and manages to pierce the creature's left eye. However, the warrior is unable to defeat Octavia and ends up being wounded during the duel. Just as she was about to be devoured, John and his T-Rex showed up and brought reinforcements to defeat the enemy army. With the Tyrannosaur's help, Mayen manages to tear a chunk out of Yutyrannus's body and knocks Octavia off the bridge along with the creature. At that moment, one of the soldiers realizes that the battle has been lost and tries to escape, so Mayan orders Helena to eliminate him before he has a chance to pass on information to Nerva. However, the paleontologist remembers her friends who were unjustly eliminated and is unable to shoot the arrow. A few hours later, the guard arrives at the general's camp and tells him everything that happened in the mining camp. Nerva then begins to think of a plan to steal the 3 artifacts which, together, will take him back to Rome. What he doesn't realize is that Mei Ying is training the former prisoners to fight against his army. But Helena doesn't agree with the rigidity with which her friend is treating the refugees who have just left the mining camp. With the help of her allies, Helena was able to bring those people back to life, so she believes they deserve to rest and recover before thinking about the next battle. When she was little, Mei Ying and her brother lived in China and were trained very strictly by their grandfather, whose mission was to prepare them to take charge of their people. Because of her childhood, Mei Ying has become a brutal warrior who tolerates no mistakes and refuses to forgive Helena for letting Octavia's army soldier escape alive. Even though she knows her friend is upset, Helena asks her to teach her how to be a warrior, as she intends to take part in the battle. From that day on, the paleontologist starts training hard and Mei Ying uses the strict methodology she learned from her late grandfather to train her. As a teenager, Mei Ying saw her loved one eliminated during an invasion and fought alone against a group of ninjas to protect her younger brother. After that, she was never the same, but she was pleased to have been able to do her duty. That night, John's village is attacked, because thanks to the information provided by the messenger, Edmund and the general have managed to find the location of their enemies. Seeing his village being set on fire, John takes up his rifle to fight back and orders his daughter to help Henry take the refugees to safety. While Edmund goes off in search of the artifact, General Nerva takes to the field to get his revenge on Helena, but Mei Ying is determined to protect her friend. Together, they try to eliminate Nerva, but he is an experienced warrior and won't accept being defeated easily. After knocking Helena off the bridge, the man goes after Mei Ying, but the warrior hides in the smoke to surprise him with her blows. As an expert fighter, she wins the admiration of her opponent and is about to eliminate the general when she is hit by a tranquilizer dart fired by Edmund. Furious at having their duel interrupted, Nerva decides to take his opponent alive and Helena takes her arrows to save her friend. However, John convinces her to wait for the right moment to strike and assures her that they will bring Mei Ying back soon. Upon arriving at the camp, Nerva tries to extract information about Helena's whereabouts, but Mei Ying refuses to give any information to the enemy, even though she knows she could be eliminated at any moment. But to her surprise, instead of threatening her, the general proposes an alliance and recalls the day the warrior arrived on the island. Soon after being sent to the Ark, Mei Ying met Nerva, who taught her how to live there. However, their ideological differences have led them down different paths. Therefore, the woman says she would rather be eliminated than hang out with someone who has no appreciation for human life. When Nerva leaves, Edmund enters the cell to talk to his former leader. The man is actually a traitor, as he belonged to Mei Ying's group of allies, but betrayed her during the war against the general. Because of him, Mei Ying and her troops lost the battle and the warrior came to be hated by her own allies, who all blamed her for trusting Edmund. While the woman is imprisoned, Helena and her friends try to come up with a plan to break into the camp and rescue her. That night, a few hours before the raid began, John went to talk to his daughter and said that he was very proud of the person she had become. He then asks Alessi to rest, because the next day they will fight a great battle, and stays by the girl's side until she falls asleep. Due to her nervousness, Helena can't sleep and says she's afraid of losing her friends in this battle. When he hears this, John tells her that it's good to be afraid, because it will keep her alive. At this point, the man says it's time to leave, as he was waiting for his daughter to go to sleep so they could go into battle. Before leaving, John leaves a letter for the girl and Helena says goodbye to Scary because she wants him to be safe with Alessi. That night, John and Helena set off alone towards the camp and, with the help of Alessi's pet lizard, they manage to scale the fortress walls. Once there, John attacks the guards while Helena goes off to find Mei Ying and scatters matches around General Nerva's wine barrels. Suddenly, while walking through the camp, the paleontologist spots her friend tied to a cross and runs to help her. Just then, the man who had his life spared in the mining camp appears and attacks Helena. In an attempt to escape, she pierces the enemy's leg with a dagger and flees. However, she ends up being chased by the soldier and has to shoot an arrow into his throat in order to survive. Helena then frees Mei Ying and discovers that General Nerva has set a trap to capture her, as he was sure that the paleontologist would show up to rescue her friend. What Nerva didn't expect was that John was also infiltrating the camp and, seeing his allies in danger, he used a flaming arrow to start the explosion. When the gates are breached, Henry and his army invade the fortress in the company of large carnivorous dinosaurs, who join the battle to help the humans defeat their enemies. Seeing his T-Rex perished on the ground, Nerva summons his most powerful ally into battle and the creature easily eliminates the 2 tyrannosaurs who were allied with John. After losing one of his hands, Edmund decides to flee, but John remains steadfast in his mission and challenges the general to a duel. When she wakes up, Alessi finds the letter left by her father and realizes that she has been left out of the Great War. While the girl tearfully reads the letter, John is in a duel against Nerva so that his friends have a chance to escape, and when a group of soldiers block the passage, Scary appears to rescue the team. After eliminating the guards, Parasaurolophone takes Helena and Mayan out of the camp and the paleontologist uses a flare to inform John that she has managed to escape. Seeing the sign in the sky, the warrior smiles, knowing that he has achieved his goal and sacrifices his life to try to eliminate Nerva once and for all. However, before he has the chance to eliminate him, John ends up having his chest pierced by a sword, but before he dies, he performs his last act and causes an explosion capable of destroying the great beast controlled by the general. That night, John has the privilege of dying in peace and reuniting with his wife and daughter, who died before he was sent to Ark. When he hears the news of his old friend's perishment, Cord deeply regrets not being at his side in that battle and decides to team up with Mayan to avenge him. So what did you think of this series? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more series recaps. See you next time.